Computer. Okay, cool. Okay. Good afternoon, I had to stop and think it was the afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Fireside Chat with Debbie Marks. And I'm very excited today because we are going to interview Linda Thomas. Linda Thomas is a woman of many, many, many talents. And in not one, but many industries, and she's has multiple roles, excuse me. She has spent many years in business, and in talking with her, she mentioned that she actually grew up in a entrepreneurial home where both of her parents were in business for themselves. So, you know, if anything, that is an awesome family atmosphere to have. Linda is the founder of Legacy of Love Project, and which changes lives and legacies in many ways. Linda did send me the links for her, and Kathy, did you get a copy of that? Maybe you could put them in for Linda.
I did not get a copy of that. I got your original email, but I didn't get that. But I will look that up.
Okay, cool. I thought it would be helpful because she gives 3 links for her, and I just want to kind of shorten the time. So anyways, starting off today, Linda, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm very excited about this interview. I feel as though you have a lot of information to offer, not only just women, but men who may listen to the recording of this. And by the way, we've gotten a couple new members. So to start off with, can you tell us a little about your background and how it impacted the things that you have going on right now?
Okay, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to join you all. Just a word about me to set the stage, and it kind of underlies everything else. As Debbie did mention, I do come from an entrepreneurial family. And as Debbie and I discussed, when your parents are out there running a business without a safety net, it does affect everyone. So I've got an entrepreneurial spirit just woven in. I like to say that I'm unemployable. It's just so hard to be under someone else's direction anymore. But underlying all of that is I have an insatiable curiosity, and I'm always learning and growing, and I'm always looking for a way to make things go more smoothly and go better. And when I find anything else that's good, I'm always sharing it with other people so that things can go better for them than it did for me as kind of a trailblazer figuring it out for myself. So with that said, in family business, when you're the child of the owner, you often get to wear all the hats. You come up and do all the things. So I've been in administration, bookkeeping, sales, finance. I've worked with customers on the phone, in person. I've dealt with in the inventory. So I'm organizing physical things. I'm organizing numbers in the bookkeeping. I'm organizing systems and creating forms. And through the years, I worked with computers, which turns out I really love doing. So all those things go into what I'm doing today. It all has proved useful. After leaving working for my parents for many years, I went into business with my husband and ran a brick and mortar there. And so it was all the same things, only basically 10x, because you're doing it yourself and you really don't have a safety net now. There was more stress, more hours, more moving parts. more customers, more issues of every kind. And to boot with all of that, he had actually diabetes. So that is a chronic lifelong illness that you don't really get rid of, and it gets worse, which it did. All the things got worse. So we were running a business and dealing with his failing health. So ultimately, we did end up having to close the doors on our business while I tended to his needs. And as you might have guessed, he ultimately did pass away. So that's kind of where I'll pause for you, Debbie. As if that wasn't enough.
Well, and it is on a personal level, it is hard closing an actual brick and mortar store. And when you're dealing with someone else that, or when you're dealing with a loved one that has an illness and you have to focus on them, closing that door, I mean, it's like God gave you the door to open, and now he wants you to focus on something else. So it is hard, but kudos to you for realizing that's what you needed to do. So all of your life experiences came through at this point. What thoughts continued to develop after your husband passed away?
So those of you who are in business and just we're all in life, and it's quite the wild ride. You know, we had done what planning we could, but once we were kind of caught in that storm, you're really just trying to cope. And so the planning that was able to be done was done, and then you're just hanging on at that point. And as I went through that with all the chaos and the overwhelm of that time, I knew there had to be a better way of doing this, that if people did these things well before a storm might come into their lives, they would be so much better off. So these thoughts just kept moving around in the back of my mind as we went through it after he passed, and then for years afterward. So because we had closed our business and there was no way for me to try running that by myself based on the nature of what our business was, I went into the workforce for several years. And then as I sought to get out of there, I built up my speaking and my training and my coaching practice. And mixed in with all of that is the fact that I'm a woman of faith. And I don't know where everyone stands on that, but it's central for me. And so through all of this, I kept following God's leadership the best I could in my daily walk. And because I just always am watching people, I was watching what happened in other people's lives. And what really brought all of this to a head for me was my time working with one elderly client who had a genetically based illness that was really beginning to take over her life and lead her toward the end of her life. And as I saw how hard it was for her to cope and make decisions and make additional plans at that stage, and seeing the state of disarray with some of her personal affairs, and particularly her business affairs and digital affairs, I really began to understand so clearly what her family was going to face when she passed away.
So that's really very interesting. When you got to this point, what did you call this process, and how long does it take?
Okay, so as I started seeing just the impending disaster that was facing that person and other people, as I looked around, in my mind, because I'm an organizer and a creator and a problem solver, I started creating this process where people could begin to pull together all of their details and create their own perfect end of life plan. But it had to be done in a manageable way that would fit into their lives, because we're all always too busy. And I knew that if it wasn't manageable, nobody would still do it. So I pulled all these ideas together, and it's still constantly developing and being enhanced, but it's an amazing thing. And I've called it the Legacy of Love Project. And in it, we walk together step by step and help people create their perfect end of life plan in 90 days. So I've kept it really flexible, because if life gets super hectic, people can press pause and they can come back when they're ready. And there's loads of support from me and from the private community. So if it's okay with you, I'm open to answering some questions that you and your listeners might have about these sorts of matters. It would be so great if more people were talking about these things.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And the thing is that so many of us just put it in the back of our mind, on the back burner, and say, I'll get to it someday. And that someday comes and it smacks you right between the eyes. And you just, you know, it's difficult. Does anybody have any questions so far for Linda? Diane?
I have a question. Linda, are your clients, are they in hospice where they have an illness where they know that that the end is coming, or could it also be geared for someone that might be aging, but suddenly, you know, the end might come very suddenly?
That it covers the whole spectrum. Because if you have suddenly gotten that diagnosis, or you're really getting tuned into your mortality, and you haven't done anything, wow, this becomes so critical. But also a person in middle years or later years who hasn't gotten to it yet, who's realizing, wow, I need to get on this, that is a person. But quite honestly, anybody over age 18 needs to be looking at this.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, do you have anything? Sally?
My question is, did I get all of the right links in the chat? And well,
Yes.
Actually, let me look, because I was seeing Tech Mastery and it needs to be Legacy of Love.
oh, I just pulled up your website.
Right. So Debbie has all my links.
Okay.
I sent them in an email to you, Kathy.
Yeah, the email that I got from you, Debbie, had, excuse me, it had the original email that went out to her, but I didn't get the one that she responded. I didn't get that copy.
Oh dear, I sent you
Yeah.
3 of them. So,
Okay. I'm looking.
and it would have been after 11 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, I've been flipping rooms. Sorry. Well, let's go on to Sally's question, and I'll
Okay.
look in my
I'm-
email box.
I'm going to drop these in. I don't know how the format's going to look in the chat, but so that has like a little checkbox there that looks
Okay.
a little wonky, but that at least has some links.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's
Because
great.
the assessment will be
Mhm.
important if anybody's interested in that.
I don't
Sally,
have a question, Linda, but I do totally agree that my late husband and I spent our 37th anniversary doing all of that, like
Mm.
going through our finances. And he was in Landfair nursing home, and then he came home on hospice. So we had all that done, even like pre-planning the funeral.
Yeah.
And all of that. He had pancreatic cancer, so we knew that time was short. And now with my new husband, when we weren't planning on getting married, we went to the lawyer anyway and drafted our everything. Of course, we had to redo it now that we got married, but you know, power of attorney, health power of attorney, what we wanted at our funeral, just how we wanted everything divided up. So it's so very, very important. And you talk about legacy, that's aside from cleaning out your house before you die, having all this planned before you die is a gift to your
Right.
children.
Right. And actually, this is more important. but you know, cleaning out your house is truly a blessing to those you leave behind.
If
Yeah, and I
everything's
mean,
planned, you can grieve. You don't have to.
exactly.
Mhm.
That's
Do
so
you-
true. I mean, that's one of the things that I emphasize so much to people is the gift that you give to the folks you leave behind is the ability to be fully present in love and support for each other and not have to put on some kind of a business hat and make business decisions while they're blinded with grief. I mean,
Yeah.
it's cruel really to do that to those that you love.
Yeah, it is. My, just a mention here, my sister, who lives in Oklahoma, on January 8th, on the January 7th, Tim was fine. January 8th, he had a massive stroke and has gone to the point where he can't work, and he can't really make good decisions, and he can't get around. So everything in one day went to my sister. And luckily she's got 3 boys. But still, I mean, sometimes this situation is thrust upon somebody when you least expect it. And that's hard to just get over. And she's talked to me several times, and she keeps telling me, if you don't have it set up, you better do it, because something like that would happen, and you when you least expect it. And I wish she had someone there that she could talk to for her to realize. And I saw it when I was when my mom got to this point where she doesn't understand what is going on with him, and she expects it to go back to normal. And you know, that just doesn't happen. That just is not going to happen. And evidently he's had about 10 or 12 more of those mini strokes that they have, and sometimes they don't even know they're having it. But I'm sorry, I got carried away. But I thought that was a good example.
Right.
So my next question to you is, how big of a deal is end of life planning anyway, and why does it matter? I think I already answered that, but that's okay.
Yeah, we kind of got into part of that, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful gift to those that you love, and they're able to be fully present to support one another and to honor your memory instead of resenting you and being overwhelmed and exhausted. They can love you and miss you, which we hope they will. It also is a wonderful thing because it sets your loved ones up for a more full and resilient recovery. They are, instead of coming from depletion, overwhelm, and resentment, and maybe even hatred, they're coming from love and support and all of the good things about who you were and having their other loved ones around them. And another really great thing about it is it opens the lines of communication now and early in ways that are just so amazing and beautiful and important. You're having conversations about what your choices and your preferences are. You're starting to tell those stories and share your values. So those are really incredible. And then on the tangible side, which is what people usually think about when it comes to having a will and setting those things in place, it allows you to make sure that the earthly assets that you've gathered during life are going to be distributed in a smooth way and to exactly the person you intended. Because many a person has found out that assets that they had of various sorts did not go, well, they didn't find out, but the family found out that it didn't go as intended. Because there are things like, even, I'll just throw out the idea of a beneficiary, an old beneficiary on an old account, that will trump anything that is in your will. And most people don't even know that. So these are just a few of the many reasons why doing these things now is such a big deal.
So in other words, the beneficiaries that we listed back, let's see, we've been married 48 years, would trump anybody now.
In your
Right.
will, yeah. So if you said, I want everything to go to my children in your will, but you had an old, like, let's say life insurance account, and your ex-husband, who you don't care for anymore, is the beneficiary, he gets all of it. And your kids are, pick a word, out of luck.
I had no idea. That's interesting.
I actually had a story similar to that when I was in the nail salon. One of my clients, she was all excited. She came in, she got her nails done. She said, I think he's going to propose. And I'm like, oh, this is exciting. And sure enough, he proposed. And there were pictures all over Facebook with her beautiful ring, of course, with her beautiful nails that I did. And fast forward, they were only married about a year, maybe a year and a half. And he had a massive heart attack and passed away. Well, in that year and a half, she sold her house. She took the proceeds from the sale. She upgraded his house because they decided between the two houses that they were going to live in his. So she took the proceeds from her house and put it over into his house, you know, all new carpet, all new whatever, new roof, whatever. And anyway, that was her forever home. And this was her, you know, love of her life. And a year and a half into the marriage, he passed with a massive heart attack. And of course, she was grieving. But then the shock set in when she discovered that not only had he not changed his benefits from his employment over to her, they were still going to his ex-wife, that the life insurance also went to the ex-wife and the house also went to the ex-wife. So all of a sudden she lost her home, her husband, and all the finances. And she's not recovered yet. And that's been several years ago.
Wow. I have goosebumps, and not in a good way. Wow,
Yeah.
that's terrible.
Are there any important things happening in the world of digital assets?
Yeah, so this is another thing that most people are completely unaware of. Your digital assets are governed by, I guess I should say what a digital asset is for starters. That could be your email. If you're in business and you have a website, if you have Facebook account, Instagram account, whether for personal or for business, every time you sign up for an account like that, you sign some kind of a consent or click a box that says, I agree to terms and conditions. And whatever is in that you didn't read is what governs everything about that account. And if you pass away, in all likelihood, anybody that wants access to that is going to need to get a court order. And yeah, so in recent years, there is a law called RUFADA, and it has to do with access to digital assets. And like a version of it was drafted, and most of the states have modified it a little bit and passed it in their own jurisdiction. I'm not sure when Ohio passed theirs. I'm pretty sure you have. In Pennsylvania, ours only just took effect at the beginning of 2021. And so here's the deal with that. If you have a will that was written before RUFADA passed in your state, your will is already out of date and inadequate, because there's blanket language that you really should have put into your will so that executor, your heirs, etc., will not have their hands completely tied in dealing with your stuff. So like, let's just say, for example, that you pay all your bills online and the statements for your bank and the bills for your electricity and everything come to your email. If your executor or your spouse or your children are not able to open that email, they won't know how to pay the electric bill, even if they want to just keep the lights on while they're showing the house in order to sell it. And heaven forbid your remaining spouse has their hands tied in that way. So there are so many important reasons to have a plan in place, allowing access after your passing. And I will throw out in this regard as well, having your passwords gathered is a wonderful thing that you can do for those you leave behind. In my course, I actually give people a free 1-year subscription to one of the best password managers in the world. And you can begin gathering all your passwords in a safe place. And you can designate who has access on a need to know basis. You can create vaults so that if your executor needs access to certain things, or your spouse or your attorney or whomever, you can designate that. But that ability to have continuity after your passing is just so critical, regardless of whether you're leaving a spouse or not.
So it's a good, what I do here is it's a good thing to have a list of emails, passwords for whatever you do online. Okay.
Yeah. And if you have a website, or if you have, let's say, a business page on Facebook, for example, I mean, do you want your customers to know whether you passed away? Because if nobody can access to edit your account, the word won't get out to your followers in that way. So your customers need to know, is your business going to continue under new leadership, or is your business being closed forever because you were the genius behind it and you're gone? But like there, you can leave so many open loops that people are uninformed because no one can access your digital assets to keep people updated.
That's a lot. Yeah, you alluded earlier to the age.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is this isn't just for old people. And
Mhm.
how old should I have been to start thinking about it?
Well, really, you should be starting to have some of your key life documents the minute you turn 18. So a lot of us are pretty behind on that.
Yes.
Because, and let's just say, obviously we're past 18, but let's say we have children or grandchildren in approximately that age. You send those kids off to college and they get meningitis. You can't helicopter parent their medical affairs from long distance or go to the hospital and direct things. They're of age. You need to have a power of attorney for them. So that's critical.
Interesting.
Then you get married and you're in your 20s and you're like, I have my whole life ahead of me, but you've got a spouse, you've got children. I can't tell you the number of people I've spoken with in recent weeks who've been able to tell me personally about a fiance, a husband, a cousin, or someone, or themselves who lost someone in their 20s suddenly, whether it was a heart attack in your 20s, for heaven's sake, or whether it was a vehicle accident. I've heard of a bicycle rider being killed in his 20s and a motorcyclist being killed in his 20s. And a young woman dying of a heart attack in her late 20s. And so we can't ever assume that we have all the time in the world, because we don't.
No. Could an adult child or an executor on a will help an older person they care about to prepare these deals in advance? And I can kind of answer that question, yes, because I did that for my mom. But you know, what would you say?
I agree with you completely. Even if they have a few of their key documents in place, let's say they've got a will and maybe a power of attorney, there's still so much more that can be done to kind of smooth the way for the family and really bless the family that's left behind. For example, some of the things that we mentioned already, having passwords, having access to emails set up, but also, I mean, how many of us have either had to or heard about someone who needed to write an obituary suddenly for someone who passed away? You don't remember how many siblings mom or grandma had. You don't know in what order they were because there were 9 or 11 or 13 of them. You can't remember the details. You don't know exactly where they went to high school. You don't know what town they were born in because that was 90 years ago. And so by being proactive for yourself or helping an elder in your life, you can gather those details for an obituary or outright write the obituary. You can plan the funeral or the memorial. And a really wonderful thing is recording stories for those who will come in the future to read or hear and know who you were.
Yeah, because you just don't want a blank piece of paper. And it always reminds me of that poem, The Dash, where you're between the time you were born and the time you died, what went on. And that's what people want to know.
That is so true.
They want to know the story. Do you find when you talk to people or a group of people that they say, oh, this is just a big downer. I don't want to hear about this. You know, I don't need to do this. How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, let's face it, most people really do want to put it off, disregard it, and they think it's big, scary. And really, in some families and cultures, death is just not even talked about. It's not acknowledged. It's not planned for. It's not discussed. And so depending on all the things that may be going on in your mind, your experience, your family of origin, etc., these things are not talked about. But the thing that was so crazy for me as I got into this more and more is that no longer was I thinking about death with a capital D. I was really focusing on the love and the care for the people that I was making these plans for. So really the focus is on the people that you cherish, not on, the Grim Reaper. It's very positive. It's you're giving and you're setting your loved ones up for a wonderful, more resilient recovery after your passing. It's all so positive.
Yeah. So this question about why don't people prepare for this kind of goes along with a big downer. I don't want to think about this now. So do you find that there's a lot of people that they don't want to prepare?
Yeah. I actually have spoken recently with a woman who is I'm going to just blanket this and say, in a professional leadership capacity in a financial field. So I'll just leave it that vague. She's young, she has young children, but her husband will not talk about these things with her. And so they have no guardian appointed, they have no will. And she's in the financial field and it's scaring her to death. And if any of you are familiar with Dave Ramsey, he talks about women having a security gland. So her security gland is definitely going off about this, but he is just too big, too scary, too negative. He doesn't want to talk about it. I'm pretty sure she's going to end up enrolling in this course with me. And that would be a blessing for them and all concerned. So yeah, it's just, and what we do is we get scared. When we were 6, there was a monster under the bed, and now this is what we're afraid of. And we're pretty afraid to acknowledge it, a lot of us.
That's quite an example, because now what it brings to my mind is how much can she do without involving him?
Yeah.
she has to have a portfolio of her own. And so is it possible for someone like that to create or create a place for her loved ones if anything should happen to her?
I mean, ideally, it would be so much better if a couple did this jointly, of course. But I mean, definitely do what you can. If you're in a situation like that, you could have your own will prepared, have your own power of attorney prepared. You could be gathering the passwords that you have access to, leaving a list of your wishes, those kinds of things. So that would certainly be better than nothing on both parts. But you know, we definitely keep pressing for a happy ending for, you know, both parties to be
Mhm.
on board together.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been a lot of important information for anyone. And I hope that when people listen to the recording, they will find this information very useful for them. You mentioned, I believe, that with your legacy of love, you have a program, and you have, what else do you have?
The course itself, which will be beginning a fresh group of founding members, will be beginning later this month. So if anyone is interested in either knowing more, or they already know they'd like to enroll and come along for this journey, I would really welcome speaking or communicating in any way that someone feels comfortable. And I do have a free assessment that people can access using the link that's in the chat. There's a quote that I'd like to share with you real quickly from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he said, "You cannot do a kindness too soon, for you never know how soon it will be too late." So I kind of botched that. You cannot do a kindness too soon, for you never know how soon it will be too late. And just as some of the examples that have been shared on this call today, we always have more and more proof of this truth. So please feel free to download that assessment. It's free, no obligation. You can fill out the questions in your own privacy. And there's an explanation of what the answers mean. And if you would like more information, there are links in the assessment that you can get in touch, as well as the ones here in the chat. Good things that can come from this are, you can have peace of mind for yourself right now by no longer avoiding something that's scary, and seeing all the positives that we've talked about. You start having peace of mind, and it's really a joyful thing to anticipate the good things that you're planning for your loved ones. But also your family, who has been dreading thinking about you passing and what's going to happen to them, they can have peace of mind right now as well. And as we've already talked about, your family can be fully present in that moment and honor you. And you can enjoy wonderful experiences right now with people. And a lot of these really cool things do get discussed during the course, really creative and wonderful experiences that you can have with your loved ones. So these are just a few of the ways this can make a huge difference. And I do invite you to take the assessment, and please do get in touch with me. I would love it.
I printed off your 9 important questions that could change your life and legacy forever. And this is the cover to the questionnaire. And I printed it off and I was reading through it. And Linda, I have to tell you, it really, it kind of kickstarts things that you haven't thought about. And I want to thank you for sharing this with us. Who has any comments or questions? Diane, you do?
I have a question, Linda. Does your course also address the topic if you have a child with special needs that would be an adult? I have a nephew that's in his late 20s right now, but my husband and I were named guardians. My understanding was until he turned 18. However, since he is still dependent, I'm not sure how that works. And I guess that would be something that the parents would need to address.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the things we cover in the earliest parts of this course. And by the way, I do want to throw out in regard to that, because we have such pressing needs, and some of the things that we would plan would be less pressing and some are more. I actually added a module at the beginning called Quick Start, so that these really important things such as guardianship are dealt with early, so that even if something happened to someone before they completed the course, some of these really critical items would be set up. But yeah, guardianship for minor children, dependents who have special needs, or dependent adults of some sort, even your pets. All of these things need to be set up, but in particular with special needs, you need to be very careful about the way that you set up any funds that you leave to them, because if they're on a special program that it is paying for what they're getting and giving them really the critical services that they need, you could bounce them right off the program by leaving them a life insurance policy payment or other assets. So it's like you need to get all your information together, and then you do want to speak with a competent professional in that area so that those needs are protected, those services are protected.
Okay,
Mm.
thank you.
Mhm.
Kathy, Sally, do you have anything?
I have a question. I'm going to be in Florida for June 19th through the 30th. Will your class actually be on a Zoom call, or how will folks actually tap in to do the class?
It is online. So I will have some people who are local in my area, but I'll have people in other states or even other countries. So the way it will work is I will record lessons in small manageable pieces so that you can access as is convenient for you. But
Okay.
then weekly we'll have a live Zoom group coaching meeting together. And those will, if you can attend live, that's great. And if life is crazy for you that week, replays will also be available. And then there are downloads that people can access as well. And that's how they'll begin to gather their information together in a really manageable way.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
That's helpful for when life always gets in the way.
As it has a way of doing.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's family, health, whatever, job. But I think all of us here are retired from a business. So, but anyways, Linda, I want to thank you so much. I have learned a whole lot, and I would very much like to be part of your founding group here. It's something that's been on my heart for a long time. So I appreciate you coming on. And do you have any final words that you'd like to pass on?
It's just been such a pleasure to be here with all of you, and thank you for the great questions. You know, these matters are so important, and if there are things that we need to do for ourselves or for an older loved one, that's vital. But we can be an example to our adult children or nieces, nephews, etc. And I will just say this: once this is done well, in a family, everyone sees it, and then they know we don't want to go back to chaos, overwhelm, and being blinded by grief. We want this orderly, loving, supportive way of doing it. And we wanted to have that be the legacy that we leave going forward to future generations.
Yeah. How true. How true. This is a great way to end this interview, and I've learned a lot. And so to those that are going to listen to the recording, I hope that you will reach out to Linda. And if you have questions and that, she's very knowledgeable, and I think that you will learn a lot. Maybe you'll be interested in joining her group, because it's a topic that we all need to be aware of. So with that, I am going to stop recording, and again, Linda, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Linda. It's very